in the last couple of days, I've also spoken to leaders from the Palestinian National Congress, Palestinian National Council, and they seem to suggest that while you're focusing on Hamas, what about what has happened to us over the last 25 years? Gaza is an open prison. We've been targeted. Our children have been killed. Why don't you report on that? Do you go along with this Palestinian victimhood argument that is being made almost to, if not justify what Hamas has done, but at least point in the direction of those who claim there's Western hypocrisy that focuses on the deaths that have taken place, tragic in Israel, but not on what's been happening in Gaza, not just now, but over the years?
I think you put it correctly. The question is, does it justify what Hamas is doing? I don't think it justifies it, but I think it is a fair point to say that people and the Western media, and my guess is the Indian media, have ignored some of the legitimate issues that Palestinians have raised, the legitimate hardships that Palestinians have faced, the fact that there is, in effect, a 56-year occupation, and more broadly, that there is no answer to the Palestinian problem being offered. There are 5.5 million Palestinians living between the river and the sea, and they don't have political rights, and this is a huge problem. Now, it is worth, when talking about this, also pointing out that Israel has 3 times in the last 25 or 30 years made a serious offer of Palestinian statehood. The most prominent, of course, being Ehud Barak with Bill Clinton, where Clinton spent really the last year of his term as president single-mindedly focused on this, offered a deal to Arafat. Arafat refused to even counter-offer and instead launched the Second Intifada. A version of that deal was then offered again to Abu Mazen by Ehud Olmert. Barak was a left-wing Israeli politician. Olmert was a right-wing Israeli politician. So, and again, no response, no counter-offer. So the question becomes, when you think about Palestinian victimhood and such, you have to put some blame on Palestinian leaders. Look, you may have a just cause in the world, but you have to have strength and good leadership to be able to achieve those goals. India had a good cause in searching for independence, but it was blessed by having extraordinarily powerful, shrewd leaders who unified India, presented a single set of demands to the British, were disciplined about how they acted. As I say, Gandhi decided on a strategy of nonviolence and rigidly adhered to it to the point where he would discipline people who refused to do it. You see none of that on the Palestinian side. So you can't be too surprised, sadly, that if people with a just and legitimate grievance are very badly led by corrupt and feckless and dysfunctional leadership, that the cause doesn't prosper.
You know, it's interesting you mentioned Arafat and Clinton, because it was famously said of Arafat, he's never missed an opportunity to miss an opportunity. But we are now in 2023, very different leadership. Even in the United States, there's a sense that the United States also hasn't invested enough anymore in a solution, in a two-state solution that most observers believe is the only way out, Israel and Palestine living, coexisting peacefully. The Biden administration hasn't done enough, and now suddenly it's sending its entire forces into Israel and saying we are standing by your shoulder. To what extent, what is America's role going to now be, and did America take its eye off the ball?
So the biggest difficulty in the strategy in what you're describing is that the Netanyahu government is absolutely determined that there be no two-state solution. It has senior members of the cabinet who believe that the right strategy for Israel is to annex everything, all of the West Bank, all of Gaza, create a greater Israel from the river to the sea. I don't know what they plan to do with the 5.5 million Palestinians living there, but the real obstacle here is the Netanyahu government. But I think you make an interesting point, Rajdeep, and I'd say the broader strategic context in which all this has happened has been the withdrawal of American power from the Middle East. The United States was the primus inter pares. It was the dominating force in the Middle East. It had better relations with most countries in the Middle East than they had with each other. And ever since the Iraq war, America has been withdrawing its military, its political, its diplomatic footprint, focusing instead on Asia, focusing, of course, very, very significantly on India. But what has therefore been created is a kind of post-American Middle East. And into that vacuum, what has happened is you have had a series of actors trying to assert their influence, trying to take advantage. Iran, which was the principal beneficiary of the Iraq war, which now has militias in Iraq, the government of Syria, militias and the Houthis in Yemen, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and of course, reasonably friendly relations with Qatar. But then you have Saudi Arabia trying to flex its muscles and become the most powerful country in the Middle East because it is the richest country in the Middle East. You have Turkey that has decided it needs to protect its equities. And of course, you have Israel. But you have a lot of malign forces as well, Hezbollah, Hamas, the militias. So what has happened is the withdrawal of American power has created a vacuum into which all kinds of forces have filled. And I would say the lesson for the United States is, be careful about withdrawing in diplomatically and politically. It's understandable not wanting to be involved militarily. But for the rest of the world, I think that there's a larger issue, which is people love to yell and scream about American hegemony. We are now seeing what the world would look like in the absence of American hegemony.